Hello and welcome to the Buddy Martin Show. Stand by, please.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
What if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Hello and welcome to the Buddy Martin Show on Thursday night. Glad to be with you on the 10th anniversary of The Promise. Arguably the most historical moment in Florida football history when it comes to words. When Newt Rockne did Win for the Gipper, Hollywood was there and chronicled it. We've heard about it for all these years. Now it's been 10 years since Tim Tebow looked into the camera and made that wonderful prediction and promise that came true. So, Windman for the Gipper, Windman for the Timmer. Anyway, I was there that day. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. Brendan Martin's video is up on the page now, Buddy Martin Show page 1. He shot that night. And I'll get into it more later with what it's like. You heard me talk about it probably with friends. We were both sitting there that night. And this, hard to believe, it's been 10 years. And, of course, Tim will be back on campus next week for the big Ring of Honor and the big day coming up for the LSU game. All right. Tonight on the program, we'll talk to our man Zach Abolverdi, the editor of Gator Bait, about the Tebow promise. He was about 14 and 15, I guess. No, I guess he said he graduated high school, so he was about 18 then. And also about what's transpired with this Gator football team as we look toward Mississippi State on a Saturday night, 6 p.m. kick in Starkville. Things are heating up. And we go down to Mississippi tonight to talk to an old friend. Max Howell will join us about the bottom of the hour, and he'll talk about what they're saying in Mississippi, calling this perhaps the biggest game in the history of Mississippi State football. And it may very well be. So we'll discuss that with Zach and also with Mac. We've got a couple of videos we're going to try to play. We had problems technically last night getting them to you. One was an interesting interview with Chris Doran, who had some very interesting things to say in his Ocala Quarterback Club speech last night about what he thought might be wrong with the offense a little bit. And also his take on what it's like when he picks his team not to win and people come down on him on social media. And as you know, last week, Chris fired back at one guy in particular. So that'll be coming up momentarily. And then who you got? I don't know about you. We have this little thing called the card, which we, at the Ocala Quarterback Club, which we use and have a good time with, making our picks. Fred Lant is the scorekeeper, and he's the guy who makes the lines here. And we'll be picking those tonight with Fred Lant, along with Danny Williams, who is a pretty good picker himself, pretty good handicapper, just got back from Vegas himself. So it's a slow night here on the program because there's so much football going on. It's okay. We got lots of stuff we're going to talk about. We're fine with it. Glad to see those of you who are on. David and Jennifer, Alexander, Nat, my cousin Robin, Roger Byrne checking in from Ningbo. Good to hear from you, Roger. Hope you're well over there. And also Kevin Rowell and Richard Clements. So good evening. Thanks for tuning in, guys, tonight. We know we're going to probably be a little slow because of football. I watched Terry Bradshaw on the pregame show, the Rams and Vikings. He did this the first time Fox has done the Thursday Night Football. It just occurred to me that really everybody's got primetime football except Fox. Now they got primetime football on Thursday nights. Terry Bradshaw in the studio show. Michael Strahan hosting this studio show. Doing a pretty good job. And there's just three of them in the studio. And then you've got Howie Long there with him. And I kind of liked it, the bright lights feel. Fox does the bright light stuff pretty well, and I'll give them that in football. So watching that, we'll probably watch a play or two tonight on the NFL. Don't watch a lot. And, of course, I'll keep an eye out for that Miami-North Carolina game. I don't know if you're watching or not. Miami up 17-10 there. I haven't a chance to watch it. I'll watch it back a little bit later on. So on the program tonight, we're going to be focusing on SEC football, of course. The breaking news today, did you hear about it? You probably did. Darius Lemons, who just made a decision, a tempestuous decision in the locker room, caused a great deal of chaos after the Kentucky loss, transferring to Kentucky. I've never in my life heard of that, where a player decides to quit after a game, announces he's going to go play for the team he just lost to. Excuse me, just bring it up a little cold here. And then what happens? Well, the news today, Darius Lemons was arrested on charges of battery by strangulation, battery and criminal mischief. I know that our friend, the Minister of Information, Graham Hall, was working on that story at Deadline. So, yeah, and so Jennifer Legg just makes a point who says she just read the article, and she says, probably why he's left. I didn't know that. Well, that would begin to make a little sense, right? Maybe there was an issue there with the law. I need to get out of town. I don't know the details, but if you get it, post it up there. You guys are good at doing that kind of stuff. So keep me in the loop tonight. Our little handful of friends tonight, and we've had some tremendous crowds on the show all week long, and we were grateful for that. We knew going in that we probably weren't going to have a very large group tonight, but it's okay. We got some good stuff. You can watch it tomorrow if you want to. So, yeah, Jennifer, you wanted to get out of town. I see what you're saying there. Good to hear from you, Jen. Also, Max, some of you may not know who Max is. Max is a legendary guy around the SEC. Max Howell used to do radio. He did one of the very first shows called Conference Call. Our station then in Ocala and Gainesville, those folks who go back that long will remember, it was a show that started at 7 o'clock at night and covered the SEC. One of the first things ever. Show did really well. Had a couple hundred stations online. Then it went on for a while. And I don't know, 4 or 5 years it disappeared. And then Max wound up at the Zone in Atlanta for a while. And then he started his own show. Anyway, he's now got a show. It's a great story. I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. Max is now one of the proprietors and the broadcaster at ESPN Mississippi in Tupelo in a grocery store. The station's in the grocery store. I kid you not. It's great. I love it. And so we'll talk to Max, and he has a lot of good stories to tell. Good evening to my man Lynn, GNK Ranger. Yeah, we don't need a large crowd. We started small. I love it. Quality over quantity. You got it right, brother. Tonight, just us folks here. That's all right. Glad to be able to have you tonight, Lynn, and all you, Jennifer, and our whole team there. Some of our original people along tonight. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take a quick break. It's going to be a short one, and come back, and I'm going to let you hear from Zach Almovardi, who has got some interesting things to say about the game on Saturday. We talk about the offense a little bit, and a little bit about Mullen. I think you'll find it interesting, so stay tuned for that while we hear a message from Daniel Hightower. Well, maybe we won't hear from Daniel. Let's do this. Let's do our Rinstar Medical Research, which is, by the way, the sponsor of our quarterback of our Player of the Week, Rinstar Star of the Week, which is the Player of the Week for the Scott Bradley Trophy at the Ocala Quarterback Club. You can see there that the winner this week was C.J. Strain from Williston. C.J. Trains, and those people all go into a pool. At the end of the year, they're going to be picked. Somebody's going to be picked to win the Scott Bradley Trophy. Of course, also Rinstar does this Red Medical Research, a really high-class facility which is used by major companies, pharmaceutical and biomedical companies. Their research is high quality. It's a patient-centered research facility, and they use cutting-edge technology. And they study things like Alzheimer's, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraine, fibromyalgia, along with many other conditions that affect our community. So the clinical research studies are regulated by the FDA, and safety is closely monitored by an independent review board. If you want to participate in some of these, you can call the number on 352-629-5800, 352-629-5800, and ask them about the research trials. And if you'd like to be involved in them, I think there's some kind of compensation involved for your time and travel. Go to Rentstar, www.rentstar.net. The information is there, and it's there's their slogan. Rentstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. All right? We'll go ahead and hear from Zach and come back and finish up some other business. Zach Albaverde, he's got a new baby and a new job, and we caught up with him today, and this is what he had to say. And out to the Rentstar split screen hotline and check with a young man who's got a new job, new baby, and all psyched up about this week. Who wouldn't be for this game, a circle game, not just for Mississippi State, but a circle game for the Florida Gators too. Zach Albaverde, I'll get it right one day, A-B-O-L, anyway, Albaverde, and he is the editor or managing editor of Gator Bait Magazine. And Zach, good to catch up with you again. And I know you get a little tingle on games like this, don't you?
You do, and everybody's been looking forward to this game all year, right? But I mean, this is one that Florida fans have had circled on their calendar. Mississippi State fans certainly have. I think, though, for the Gator fans and this fan base, probably feeling even better and more excited about this game for two reasons. Number one, what the Gators did last Saturday against Tennessee, but more importantly, what Mississippi State did or didn't do against Kentucky with that 28-7 loss. Now Florida fans starting to say, oh, maybe that week 2 loss wasn't so bad, and maybe this team in the Bulldogs that they got to face in Starkville might not be so hard to beat, because a lot of folks were looking at MSU as a potential contender in the West. I don't think anyone ever expected them to beat Alabama, but this was supposed to be a really good team, and now both of them have a loss to Kentucky on their resume.
We've always been taught not to do comparative scores or comparative games because things change when different games are played. Some people say things change from not just Saturday to Saturday, but first half to second half. But you can't help, as you point out, when you look at the dynamics of these two games, how critical they were. Florida battling against Kentucky, and people think it's a terrible loss, not so bad. Actually, Mississippi State beaten much worse by these Wildcats, and now we have to see if this team is everything it promised to be under Joe Moorhead in his first year. We know about the world-class defensive line. We know about Nick Fitzgerald. We know about a lot of things, but this environment alone is going to be something that's going to light things up. I know I had a chance to talk with James Bates. I saw his cowbell collection, which is a classic where he has all Mississippi people on the cowbells. I heard the press conference you were attended Monday where Dan Mullen talked about the ring responsibly idea. It's like going to a New Year's Eve party and saying drink responsibly, ring responsibly. I heard Dan talking about how life was for he and Megan there, how she did a lot of online shopping. And he didn't say it really in an arrogant or mean way. He was just stating the facts. That was rural life in Mississippi, but it adds to the whole thing, the whole package of this game. The big question, though, is the competition on the field, and man for man, this Florida Gator team has not proven it can measure up to Mississippi State as a 7.5-point underdog. How do you feel about this team's progression, how they have been playing, and whether this will carry over to this big game in Starkville?
It's so tough to put a precise finger on it, right, buddy? Because when you look at that week 2 loss, like we said, and that gave people a lot of opinions about this Florida team, and now they've already changed because of the way the Wildcats have been playing. But with the way that they followed up the last 2 weeks, you look at it from one standpoint and say, hey, the Gators bounced back from a really devastating loss, played great in both games, almost scored 50 points. There's a lot to like there. But then you look into the level of competition, certainly with Colorado State, and then with Tennessee. not the greatest Vols team that we've seen in the last decade, and they have a first-time head coach as well. And then you look at the factors of both of those games that led to those big wins. In the Colorado State game, it was a bunch of special teams plays against the Volunteers. They got 6 turnovers. I mean, how many Saturdays are you going to get 6 turnovers in the game? Or how many Saturdays are you going to block a kick or have a bunch of special teams plays? Yeah. I say all that because Florida's looked great at times in putting up points, but a lot of that has been helped by the other 2 phases of the game. If the Gators get into a game where they don't get that much help from the team and the level of competition is a step up, how are they going to fare? I think that's what we're going to find out on Saturday.
Yeah, and you got to give credit for the preparedness, as they say. It has a lot to do with that, not luck necessarily. You don't lead the nation in turnovers with 14 by luck alone. This is an awareness and alertness this team has gotten, a mentality of go get the football and take it away that has led to this. And I love the fact that the Sports Information Department is not saying turnover chains and backpacks, just old turnovers. So I made a good joke this week saying there was a new bakery in Knoxville where they only serve turnovers. So they had a lot of those going on right there. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I love this time of year. I love this time of year for lots of reasons. One of them is it's the 10th anniversary of Florida's Newt Rockne speech given by Tim Tebow. Rockne was, of course, memorialized by Hollywood. Tim Tebow hasn't done that yet, but I know you weren't there then because you're a youngster. You were probably in about the 5th grade when it happened or something, but you're a Gainesville guy. You know all about it. You study, you read it. And I was sitting there literally 10 feet from Tim Tebow. From your perspective, how much of an impact did this have, not just on that national championship team, but also this Florida program and where they are now?
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. When you think about that moment that Tebow had, because in that year, he's coming off a Heisman Trophy campaign. They had this high-flying offense. Everybody expected they could contend for a national championship, and they lose to Ole Miss, and it just kind of pumped the brakes on everything. And at the end of the day, you listen to what he said, and the first promise was a lot of good will come from this. And I don't know if Florida wins that national championship if they don't lose to Ole Miss that day. So, and he took that. He knew what it was going to do for him and his teammates to motivate them the rest of the year. And, I mean, that's something that Florida fans and Gator Nation will remember forever for the way that he took that on his shoulders. He didn't have to get up there on the podium and do that. But the fact that he did was amazing in and of itself. And then that he backed up those words, he delivered on his promise, and we can all look back on it 10 years from now. It's one of the great moments in Florida football history.
Now for you, as a probably a teen or a preteen, I know that was one view. I want to get yours. For me, grizzled old veteran, even back then, I'd seen it. I thought, I was stunned. I literally shook my head and thought, what have we just seen here? This is remarkable. I had never seen anything quite like that. And then to live up to it, it was really, as the years go on, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger than it is right now, but it's pretty big now. For you as a young boy, what was it like when you heard about it?
Well, I mean, actually, buddy, I was out of high school. I had just
really?
graduated. I graduated class of 2008. So, at that time, it was a really big deal because I remember after the loss and everybody being so stunned that Florida got upset by the Rebels. And as the day kind of went on, I mean, I wasn't in the media at the time, so did you hear what Tebow said? Did you hear Tebow's? I mean, it was such a thing that Gator fans kind of were looking to because they needed somebody and they needed that speech because they were reeling after that loss. And for Tebow to just take that on like that, buddy, it just shows the type of person he is, the type of leader that he was. And, Florida was never the same without him.
All right, Zach, let's talk for a second about some things that have happened this week. The news that Darius Lemon's now being arrested for, I think, aggravated assault, whatever it was, and as we talk, sitting in a jailhouse. That's one of those transfers that didn't go well. And Gator fans are tempted to say, well, good riddance. But you feel sorry for the young man, but not good decision-making probably by Darius.
Yeah, it's a really bad situation. It's sad to see. If he was still with the Florida football team, he would not have been in that situation. He'd have been with the team in Knoxville. So,
and may have had a couple of reps by now because the running back, it's not as deep as it was then. But yeah.
Yeah, no, he definitely would, and I think Florida needed him after that Malik Davis injury. They still would be relying, I think, on Scarlett. But, it is what it is. Florida's moved on. I think it, might end up being for their benefit down the road that he's no longer a member of their team.
Yeah, and of course, it benefited a guy named Damian Pierce, who's been nothing short of dynamic. We've seen it do it in 2 games, not as much as it would mean on Saturday night in Starkville to see him break one. He's got the speed to do that. Let's talk about the what I call the unintended consequence. I think Mark Longley came up with that name of these transfers now. We didn't expect with this redshirt rule, which I liked, by the way, to affect transfers this way and give so many options to the player and have things happen like Kelly Bryant and other players around the SEC now utilizing that as a leverage to go someplace else. I'm not against it, but it certainly is a bit of a surprise. I don't think anybody saw this coming, did they, Zach?
No, clearly not. I mean, the coaches were totally on board with this across the country for what it would mean with their freshman players, allowing them to, play early in the season, also play late in the season if he had some injuries come up. He didn't want to worry about burning a guy's year for someone who didn't maybe play, the first half of the season. But now the quarterbacks have taken this, and now they have the power because we really don't see that. The coach is in charge of, who starts, who plays, where they transfer, and whatever. And now, players, but specifically quarterbacks, because they're the ones, I think, more than anything, where they're going through a season and they're evaluating where they stand on a depth chart, and it means more to them than it does any other player at any other position. Because, other guys can have a shot throughout the season and maybe get some reps or whatever, but more times than not, if your quarterback, whoever you name it, that's your guy. So,
team leader, he's the guy. He's the guy you look to. You're right, yeah.
Absolutely. So, a very smart move by Kelly that he kind of knew the writing on the wall and decided, hey, I'm not going to sit here the rest of the season and let my senior year go to waste. I'm going to take out, go somewhere and spend 2019. But look, credit to Dabo Swinney too. And I've always kind of liked Dabo. I haven't met him before, but I've just liked some of the way that he's carried himself in the past. But to tell Kelly Bryant, this is what I'm going to do. This is a decision I'm going to make. You can stay or go. Credit to him because let's be honest, buddy, he could have waited a week and not told him until week 5, and then the kid would have been stuck. I think he knew that there was a potential for this, so he gave him that option, and they parted ways.
Didn't exploit him, for which you give Dabo a lot of respect for that, doing something like that.
No doubt.
All right, so any particular thing that you see needs tweaking? I had an interesting conversation this week with Chris Doran of the SEC Network. He was here in town for a speech, and we talked about some of the tweaking of the offense. And surprisingly, one thing he said, and not in a critical manner, he loves Florida's offensive coaches, and he loves Billy Gonzalez and what have you. But he made an observation I hadn't thought about. Felipe Frank's getting a lot of heat because of his indecisiveness. Chris looked at a lot of tape, and Chris came back and said, I noticed Florida receivers are not getting open a lot. And as a result, you see Felipe back there trying to find an open receiver, and they're not open. And he says his assessment was maybe, and he just suggests this, maybe they run too many go routes. A go route is easier to cover if you do that all the time. The ones that the route's hard to cover, the ones where you stick your foot in the ground and you run that post, or you run that post corner, or you run that whatever route you're crossing route, whatever it may be. So I thought that was interesting. I have not looked at the film. I have not thought about that. Have you? And what do you think about that comment?
Well, it's something that I think part of that conversation and the way that you're talking about being used as a receiver in those kind of routes would seem perfect for Kadarius Toney, right?
Yes.
A guy that still hasn't done a lot in the passing game, even though he's had some rushes, and he made an appearance again last week, and Mullen was asked, what this guy got to do to get more carries. He's averaging 12 yards a touch. And, Mullen basically said, hey, we would like to get him the ball more, but the last 2 weeks we haven't run enough plays. The game hasn't, played out and worked out so that we could get guys. We're not going to force guys the ball, but I do think that they still need to figure out ways that they can get a little bit more consistency in how the ball is distributed. They have no problem getting it and spreading the wealth. It's just getting it more of a consistent basis, figuring out who those get-it-to guys are, and then just starting to take advantage of those matchups a little bit more. But as we know, buddy, it's a work in progress. I think they're trying to figure out what these guys can and can't do, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And, specifically when it comes to route running, I feel like these guys are getting coached harder and more than they've ever been before. So they got to get ready to be on Billy Gonzalez's level because it's a step up from where they were getting coached last year.
Right, and as you point out, 44 plays is going to give you a chance for a lot of touches. That's about half what you need to run, among the fewest run by teams in the country. And the second thing is Kadarius Toney. He's got to learn to run routes. He can't block. He doesn't run good routes. He does have that great speed to him, escapability, and in this ball game, where you can't run right, at least I don't think they can run right at him. I'll be surprised if they do. You're going to have bubble screens. You don't see the draw play run that much either, by the way. You got bubble screens, draws, what have you. Quick outs to Kadarius Toney, get the ball to him in space. That's what's got to happen. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, too, buddy, is, other than the Kentucky game, Florida hasn't been in a situation where they had to show their hand, where they had to really open the playbook and, show a lot of their, different formations, potentially some trick plays, or just stuff they haven't put on film. I mean, they got up early against Tennessee and they held that lead. Why do you pull out some of those stops? I think when they get in a game like a Mississippi State, LSU, certainly Georgia, you're going to have to see them get a little bit more creative with how they call plays. But I would imagine that the staff's kind of waiting for those opportunities, too.
Without David Reese or without Stacey Jefferson playing a little bit better right now, I would give Florida no chance. I give Florida a puncher's chance against Mississippi. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm picking the Bulldogs to win. I still think back to what Dan Mullen said last week. Before the game, buddy, he told Jeff Cardozo, I don't know how our team is going to show up here in this environment today. 100,000 people. I know how I'm going to be because I coached in these environments. I don't know how these players are going to react. Well, he found out. And they reacted really well, and they played really well. But I go back to what I said. I just don't know on a week-to-week basis that they're going to get a lot of turnovers. They're going to get all these special teams plays and be able to count on that to help with their offensive production. I think this is going to be one week, buddy, where the offense is going to have to pull a little bit more of its weight. And I just don't know if they can against that defensive line at Mississippi State. I think that's going to give Florida some fits. And I got the Bulldogs winning 24-17.
Okay, well, I haven't made my pick yet. I'm leaning toward taking the 7.5 points if I were a gambling man. But I'm not going to make my pick until Friday. But it's a tough one. It's a tough game because, as you say, will the team that showed up at Tennessee show up in Starkville? And if so, will the loose balls be there? It'd be an interesting way to find out. 6 p.m. kick on Saturday night, so that's going to be fun. I can't wait for it to get started. As always, good stuff, Zach. Appreciate that. Tell folks about Gator Bait and how to get a hold of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can, if you haven't already, you can subscribe at GatorBait.net. We put out a weekly magazine every Wednesday. We're kind of adding new features every week. I started in September when my daughter was being born. So each week we're trying to add some more stuff, and we're really bringing you some cool features as the season goes along. And with these games getting better, the stories get better, and it's great. You can also catch me on the tailgate Monday through Friday. And Jeff and I started our podcast back up as well, Chomp Chat, that we do twice a week now too. So it's football season, buddy. So there's so much to talk and write about.
Right, and next time I'll get your name spelled right. I keep putting one L-A-A-L-B. I can't get past. It's not Albo, it's Abo Verde, and I apologize for that. Got an old graphic up, but people know who you are. Zach A. That's what you should say, buddy.
There you go.
Appreciate it very much, Zach. Have a good one. Enjoy the game.
Absolutely. You too, buddy.
Thanks to Zach there. We found out why we have the smaller numbers. I inadvertently have broadcast to the wrong channel. So while you're watching here on my Buddy Martin page as opposed to the Buddy Martin Show page, let people know over on that other place that we're live here, and we'll share this show back over to the Buddy Martin Show page. It's my bad. Earlier today I did a Our Town show on the Buddy Martin page and left it there when I went on. So anyway, thanks for those who found me tonight. No wonder we didn't appreciate it very much. So let's hear from Dan Hightower. Then we'll go try to hear from Brendan Martin, all right?
No one ever plans a car accident. Having a plan after you've been in one, however, can make a world of difference. Daniel L. Hightower has been fighting for accident victim justice in Ocala and statewide since 1976. After meeting with Dan and his team, you'll know your case matters, that you matter, and that Dan will fight hard to get you just results. If you've been severely injured through no fault of your own by a careless or reckless driver, You need Daniel L. Hightower. No.
Daniel L. Hightower, lawyer fighting for accident victim justice since 1976. We'll get that show over to you. We got some settings off on our deal tonight, and we're struggling with that a little bit, but we're getting there. Thanks to you folks who found me over here. It's great. Appreciate that very much. I'm going to step out now and see if there's a possibility we hook up with Brenden Martin, who's a long day today, and check with him because he was there on that historic day when Tebow said those words. And if you've seen his video, if you haven't seen his video, you'll be sure it's on the page. Let's see if we can hook up with Brenden for a quick minute before we go see Max Howell in a couple of minutes. So let's see if we can get Brenden online and talk with him for a second. Good evening, Brenden.
Good evening.
We don't see you yet, but we do hear you. So maybe your camera.
I didn't know what you were tonight.
Yeah, no, I messed up. I had, unfortunately, I had us on the wrong channel, but I see you in there now. And we only got a couple minutes before we get to Mac, but I want to get to you because you were there, a part of history, my friend. We were sitting, you were sitting a little back from me. I was about 10 feet away, and that 10 years ago today, the famous speech. I'm still stunned about that when I think about it. What is your take now that you looked at this 10 years later? And you had not seen that particular that particular tape till recently. It was archived in virgin condition, and you dragged it out, and boy, you had, how many people watched it?
Well, I think since I reshared it on July or June or something like that, I reshared it in the middle of the summer just to kind of get some love out there. I think we've had like 19,000 views on it, but a lot of this stuff has been, was already shared at one point years ago, obviously. So that video, seen the internet a few times. So I'd say probably culmination of that thing's probably got 150,000 lifetime hits on it somehow. But yeah, it's a great piece, and it's something I always have. I keep thinking, I got all these great tapes. Literally tapes, mini DV tapes that I shot that entire historic season on. I got to go dig them out of the archives and digitize them. And I got all those highlights that I shot that I think the entire season and post game and all that stuff from that year. And we traveled to every game. So that, of course, being a part of that entire tape archive. But yeah, it's pretty awesome because I was running in. Was it David Waters and I were talking online today? He said I was in the room too. I remember. I wish I would have known you then. I said, yeah, I was running in because we were on the sidelines because everyone was so stunned. I was shooting all this B-roll of the crowds and the fans just looking stunned because the end of the game happened and everyone couldn't believe that it happened and nobody had thought that would occur. And the whole stadium was just quiet. We were shooting all this extra stuff, and we ran into the press box because we didn't want to miss Tebow. And I didn't even have time to set up my big camera, so I actually pulled out a small handy camera that I had been using earlier in the season, and we put it on a tripod, and we got that video, which is all I have of that. But I'm glad I was able to archive obviously a pretty awesome moment in Gator history, and I remember him walking by me. I was right on the aisle, and he went out. I was like, I looked over at the other guy, and I said, "Superman just left the room." Like, the chills you had when he walked out. He was like, "Whoa, man, that was crazy." Like you knew. It was very emotional. And then I also remember thinking, "Oh man, I really wish he wouldn't have done that," because you think, now you're like, oh, it was so awesome, but as a Gator fan, I was thinking, oh, man, I hope this isn't like he did like he's going to go lose the next 4 games, and it looks like he just came apart at the seams, But obviously that wasn't the story, because the story was, as we know it, was the historic, stoic season that he had, and he did, live up to the promise. So, of course it's amazing, but it could have gone south pretty quick, because, it was one of those things where you're just like, well, if you're going to cry in front of the room, you better back it up. Or if you're going to talk shit, you better back it up. So, he walked the walk. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Pretty awesome to look back on it, and I get that's my video.
Yeah.
I remember thinking I'm gonna push in and zoom for the tears. Right, I was looking for the tears.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Awesome. What a moment! We didn't realize how big it was at the time. I didn't either, but it's a classic one for the archives. All right, we got to let you go. We got to go catch up with our friend down in Mississippi, your buddy and mine, Max Howell. They have the new ESPN Mississippi.
My new Facebook friend. He friend requested me, so just tell him what's up from his new Facebook friend.
Yeah, and he got that ESPN Mississippi station in a grocery store in Tupelo, Mississippi, who was, by the way, the hometown of Elvis Presley was born there. And Woody Page, by the way, just so you know. All right, Brenden.
Carolina. My wife spent some time in those parts.
Yeah, I know she did. Well. Yes, she did. All right, son, I got to go. Love you. Talk to you later, all right? Brenden Martin was there, the video of the Tim Tebow promise. Okay, we'll do this real quick, and I'm going to check up on Max. And again, we will be able to change our privacy settings a little later, and some of you folks will be seeing this show on the Buddy Martin Show page. And we kind of got messed up today. We're doing another regular non-sports show. I want to do this right now if I can, and we'll go get our friend Max Howell. And there you have a look at the catalog. It's not the catalog with all the stuff of the Crown Prince collection, which you want to check out. Go to All Florida Sports Bar and check it out. It's going to have beautiful shirts. Will be ready next week. I talked to Tony. He'll have those ready. Some of you pre-ordered. If you haven't, go online now and get them because they're going to be hard to get. The beautiful Circle 15 and, of course, the GNK Shield. So check it out, all right? And we'll have some of them in hand next week. So that should be very interesting. All right, Max Howell, former coach, radio star, coach at Florida State, Auburn, Troy, number of places like that. And Max has got a little thing going on right now down in Mississippi.
Hello.
That would be the voice of one Max Howell as soon as we can get to him.
I'm here.
How are you, Max? Nice to hear from you. Yeah. We hear you. We just got to get our act together tonight. The technology demons are kind of overwhelming us tonight a little bit. But we're fighting them to a draw. We got it going on. While we take a moment and put your picture up here, I've got a photograph of you, and one I like, the favorite one of you is in the white sweater that you have. And then we've got a picture of some guys sitting around a table, and a guy in a looks like a grocery store. Could that be a grocery store? My gosh, yeah. That is the home of the new station called ESPN Mississippi, and I've got it on full screen right now, and there you are over there in the corner doing your thing, and you're on the air, Max, and that's got to be exciting for you.
It really is, buddy. Thank you so much. And I told you earlier, as we visited yesterday and again this afternoon, I think we're the only one in America. We got a couple of national writers coming in. The grocery store is set to open November 1st. They're doing complete renovation of this big 25,000 square foot building, and I worked out a deal to put a radio station in this grocery store itself. And I really got the idea when we were in Atlanta, when the Dickies brought the CNN product from Ted Turner. Ted kept the video, we bought the audio. And I was engaged with those guys as they built that studio in the CNN building. So that worked out so well for all of us at that time. I just took the same concept basically and brought it to Tupelo, Mississippi, a much smaller scale. And rather than build a building, there was a building existing, open up a glass front, open up to a parking lot. So we put a radio station in it, and it's working out well.
How about that? Well, that's great, and I'd love to come down someday and see your new setup down there. And excited for you, and glad you're back on the air because people love to hear from you. And speaking of which, a little football game in Starkville this weekend. I heard something going on. You've been getting a few messages from people, and and tell me what's going on down there for the big game. I know we talked today. This might be as big a game as ever had in Starkville.
I think absolutely, buddy. Of course, Mississippi State was 3-0 going into Lexington last week, and we can't figure out where the hype got them because Kentucky had the same kind of hype going on with their program. They were 3-0. Of course, Mississippi State did not play well. I think on paper, if you laid the rosters down by both sides, Mississippi State clearly has more and better athletes. Dan Mullen has done a remarkable job. I heard this comparison today, which I wanted to tell your audience about tonight. Really, Dan Mullen cannot lose Saturday. And you know why?
Why?
Because if Mississippi State wins, he takes full credit for recruiting all those kids.
Mm-hmm.
If Florida wins, he takes full credit for getting that team ready to play. So
Great
really,
point.
Mullen cannot. Yeah, he can't lose in this deal. So I don't think he'll be met with a lot of hoorahs and happy faces because several of those hardcore fans at Mississippi State feel like he abandoned them, even though he left them with the best facilities that they'd ever had there, a higher attitude of where they were. They had that team at number 1 in the country for 4 weeks, I believe, with Prescott and that bunch. He's done a remarkable job there. And then he had a chance to go back to Florida where he'd been an assistant under Urban and won a national championship. So I think over the length of time that goes by, I think the people at Mississippi State will certainly learn to really admire and appreciate what Dan did there. However, it may be too early right now for him to do that, particularly in light of the way Mississippi State played this past week against Kentucky. They didn't play well at all. They got beat. However, I think that the line is at 7 or 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
I think the game will be at least that close or even closer for whomever comes out as a winner.
Hotels sold out all the way to Tupelo, I heard. People can't get hotel rooms, and this doesn't happen very often in Mississippi State football. There was that one moment where Dan had him number 1 in the country briefly, and that was probably the most exciting chapter in Mississippi State football in my lifetime, I can remember. Yeah. Now this whole thing with the drama, and I think Dan, I think Dan has explained it well here on this end. He did it at no time did he try to create any animosity, a rivalry. He didn't try to play the angle up. He talked about life in Mississippi without putting it down. But it was different in rural Mississippi. As you know, you lived all over Atlanta and now Tupelo. And he liked the people, and he said, I think they appreciate the job I did. He said, they may not show it on Saturday night. He said, but I think they did. And now the cowbells are coming out again. I got a kick out of that whole scenario about the cowbells and how he had the rule changed so he could have the cowbells. Now the cowbells are going to be used on him. And they asked him about what the ruls were, and he said, well, you got to ring responsibly, ring responsibly. So what's it like down there?
I think what responsible will mean, buddy, in this Saturday will be when Florida comes to the line of scrimmage. I think that'll be the responsibility. However, even the Mississippi State folks, when they put the cowbells down in a game like this, the noise volume from the cheering will raise that decimal higher because of the noise. The stadium is built really to contain the noise. It's much like Florida Field or the Swamp or Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. Not as big now. I think that stadium seats about 62 or 63,000. But I'm telling you, it'll be packed. It'll be standing room only everywhere, and people are coming. They come in with a great anticipation that they can send Florida home with a beat down.
Yeah. Of course, they had the obligatory cowbells in practice, along with the loud music, which is pretty standard, etc. This week, you get a sense that maybe Nick Fitzgerald is going to have something to prove because he didn't play well last week. And although Mississippi scored first, looked like they were going to get a whole upper hand on Kentucky, and Kentucky just ran over them for the next 3 quarters.
They really did. I think the biggest disappointment was not only the gaping holes they had in the defensive front, but also the defensive rush that they put on. that the offensive line, there were 17 penalties. The first 6, listen to this, here's a stat. The first 6 drives that Mississippi State had last week, the shortest second down line marker, was 2nd and 11.
Wow,
Most
shortest?
Second and
the
shortest.
gosh.
Most of them were 2nd and 15, and up to 2nd and 20 on several occasions. So they worked behind the chains all night long, and the reason they could not block the defensive end's rush. Fitzgerald never had a chance. When he stepped up, he'd get caught in the middle, or one of those defensive ends, Josh Allen, for example, that played their right defensive end, would beat that tackle on that side and get him from behind.
Josh Allen looks like he's unblockable almost. So I've seen him play a couple of times. Nobody can block him.
He was. In fact, I'm thinking all week long, I hope Ben's got a couple of rush ends out there. If not, get you a linebacker that can run and put him down and just let him rush the quarterback. Because if the defensive front in Florida can stop the run inside the tackles, then they're going to throw it. I can tell you right now, that will be their game plan, and they're going to put the ball in the hands of Nick Fitzgerald and hope he can win the ball game for them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think he'll have a plan. I mean, I think Todd knows that he has to have a spy on the quarterback for sure. Mississippi State's running game is not that good right now. And I think it's affected some of the medium passes, Fitzgerald, because he's been disrupted in his flow. He ran the ball a good bit. I'm sure we'll see him run the ball again a lot here. On the other side of the ball, given the great defensive linemen they have at Mississippi State, I don't know what you expect out of Florida, but you're an old coach. Seems to me with the pressure they can bring and also the brute force they can do to run the game down, I think you got to start thinking about screens and draws and, what have you, that kind of thing. Is that what you do?
Yeah, absolutely I do. And the quick hitches on the outside, stay in the gun and get a quick release quick. The bubble screen outside and get the ball away from the line of scrimmage as quick as you can. And of course, the other thing is that their starting corner, their best athlete is out this week. He went down before the Kentucky game. He didn't play against Kentucky, and he's not going to play against Florida. And I believe he plays their left defensive corner, so that'd be whoever usually lines up on your right wide out will probably have an easier go. That corner, listen, but that corner's 6'2", 225 and can run, and he's not playing. So he's an NFL player, and I think to me that would at least pose some advantage for Florida going to that side of the field where he usually plays.
Yeah. I know the coaching situation around the league right now, and the whole deal with who got who and who went where, and I'm sure you talked about it on your show on ESPN Mississippi, the new guys that came along, and the people everybody talked about, Jimbo Fisher and Scott Frost and the big three and what have you, Willie Taggart and all. Chip Kelly, which was a big fiasco we talked about, and you're the one who said Dan Mullen to me the first time. But I looked up the records the other day. I think I told you this. I had the numbers somewhere around here, not counting Mullen's 3-1 record, and the winning percentage of those others, including Chad Marsh, Jimbo Fisher, Jeremy Pruitt, even Joe Moorhead's 3-1. And that other three we mentioned is 346. 346.
Wow.
Mullen, of course, is 750, as is Moorhead. So somebody made some good decisions, and somebody didn't right now. Now, it's only a third of the season, but, boy, it's sure looking good for Scott Strickland right now, isn't it?
Yep, it really is. And, you go back and look, and I think we get those same questions, obviously. But the Scott Frost, for example, and the Chad Morris, this is Arkansas. Chip Kelly's at UCLA. I think because of their systems, they had a wrong. The matchup didn't work for them. See, Dan's system can be made applicable to what Florida's got with the talent. It can fit in, and he can do some tweaks to it and be better. But you got to remember, let's take Chad Morris, for example, at Arkansas. He brings in a wide open spread, run, pass oriented offense with talent that runs, 350-pound offensive lineman and a tight end in a running game that was used in the Big Ten, and that's the leftover. Remember, the kid that started this year at Arkansas was 6'7" and 250 pounds as a quarterback. Well, they played him up until the North Texas game. He threw 4 picks in the North Texas game. It just they can't. It just doesn't match.
Yeah.
And I was way wrong in my assessment early on with him, because I've been knowing Chad since he was coaching at Clemson, and he helped Debo win that first championship as offensive coordinator. I thought his recruiting, coming out of Texas high schools, and he had a good name, and he could bring kids in, but he can't get enough. And I thought they could win probably 5 or 6 his first year. Wrong. If they win 2, hey, they go to Texas A&M this weekend. Then they got Alabama.
Yeah, the terrible schedule. And the thing is that you're changing the system completely the opposite. So that's one of the things that gets you right there. So
Scott Frost did the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Troy went out there and beat them last week.
Yeah.
So so I guess what I'm saying to you, those numbers really don't surprise me.
Yeah.
They would have this summer, but now that we've seen them play, and those pictures are going, I think, become more clearer as the season unfolds.
Yeah. All right, real quick, just give you my thoughts about this. And for those people who tuned in late, my fault, I didn't get the right channel up, so they're all mad at me tonight. I'll stay on an extra 15 minutes tonight and catch up with some of the things people want to know about. But, Max, let's talk about this, what we call the unintended consequences of the redshirt rule. Boy. It wasn't exactly Kelly Bryant all of a sudden brought the spotlight, and Auburn had already lost a couple of guys. And, so this whole thing is now a lot different than what we thought it was. What's your take on all that?
Well, I think every case has to be really analyzed individually. But certainly maybe more high-profile guys are going. But you have to believe that Bryant Kelly's situation at Clemson, even though he's already graduated and he started the season, they barely beat Texas A&M. They played undefeated Syracuse this weekend, and I think Dabo's looking down the road. I don't think, not saying the kid can't play, but I'm gonna give you my opinion. If a kid thinks he's got a future in the NFL, I think certainly you need to think about transferring and go somewhere where you can play. If you don't, then my idea would be, why don't you stay where you are? You've been there 3 years. You've been a starter, much like Jalen Hurts did at Alabama. You're going to get your degree from there, and then, take it wherever you want to go and do whatever you need to do with your life. But now, you take Kelly Bryant, his situation is he'll be played in his 4th game. He's already graduated, so now he's got to sit out the rest of this year, and he can play next year if he wants to. But he'll be. You think he's an NFL type quarterback? I mean,
probably
not. No, that's what I think too. So my point is, there may be, in each circumstance, it may be some underlying factors that we don't know about.
Yeah, and the other one of them might be the fact that Alabama's going to be tough to beat, and maybe Trevor Lawrence is the only guy who can beat him. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he's thinking that way too.
Very true. Very absolutely. Look, Dabo's no idiot. He's already looking down the road as to what his schedule looks like, compared to who he's going to have to play. He won't take championship again in the worst sort of way. And I think that was part of the decision in driving him to make this quarterback change. Yeah. He didn't think the guy there could make it, could put him in that position.
Exactly. All right, Max, appreciate it, buddy. Tell them where they can hear you on New Mississippi Station, that grocery store. Go down and get your quart of milk and a loaf of bread and say hello to Max and listen to some good sports talk, huh?
Hey, I tell you, we stream it all over the world. It's ESPN, MISS, ESPNMississippi.com. You can get us anywhere in the world there. If you're in the North Mississippi market, we cover about a 60-mile radius with our antenna. We're in 9 counties, about 300,000 access. We're the only sports talk there. That's 95.1 FM, The Fan. That's the ESPN Mississippi, 95.1 The Fan. And, guys, we're all over everywhere. We got a little late start. We've been on the air 3 weeks tomorrow. So it's really bloomed well. Our scoreboard show is we do it on Facebook. We got over 5,000 viewers every Friday night.
All right. Good
so
job.
We're tickled to death. Yeah, we're tickled to death the way it's going. And thank you so much for all your help and your suggestions, and mostly for for being a good friend and having me on the air.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Max. It's my pleasure, and people here are saying thank you, Max. Good to hear from you, Max. You still got fans from back in the day at the conference call back here, Southern Sports Tonight.
Well,
my friend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Take care, Max, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Likewise.
Max Howell. There you go. Well, it's one of the best, by the way. Going to catch up. Again, we're sorry we had the settings wrong tonight. Some of you, Brenden kind of bailed us out and told us we were on the wrong channel, and some of you just finding us now, and we appreciate it. We're going to hang with you a little extra tonight because we did get late. This, by the way, can be replayed. You can go back and watch it over. Some of you folks are just getting it now. You can go back and grab it. So, check it out. Okay, so let's do this. Last night I tried to play this, and I thought it was pretty interesting about what Chris Doering said regarding what it's like when you pick against your team. There's some people who think it's absolutely heresy when a guy who's an analyst and doesn't pick against their alma mater, picks for their alma mater. So let's see if we can get this video not to jump tonight. And here's what, at the quarterback club last night, what Chris Doering had to say. We're here at the Ocala Quarterback Club with our featured speaker, my longtime friend, Gator Great, of course, SEC Network analyst, Chris Doering. Chris, good to have you tonight.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you. I always talk to you on the phone here. Don't get any FaceTime.
We don't get face-to-face very often,
That's right.
So it's a pleasure for me, and good to see you again. And as I said on last week's show, I enjoy your work on the network. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. But let's talk first about the unintended consequence of the new redshirt rule. Mm-hmm. Today we heard that Kelly Bryant now is leaving Clemson, transferring. Kind of shocked a lot of people because they thought he was the guy, but Trevor Lawrence was coming along and probably at some point would catch him. Your thoughts about, first of all, the decision to go and how Dabo Swinney handled it, and then we'll talk about the rule.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think the one thing that was really cool of Dabo Swinney to do is to have this conversation with him, knowing the timing, knowing that it already got to the fourth week of the season, knowing that he very well may make a decision not to be a part of the team anymore. So he said today that he did what was best for the team in naming Trevor Lawrence as the starter, and I think he handled it the right way. The thing that troubles me, though, is this idea. And I guess I don't know why I'm surprised by it, because it's the same thing we see when quarterbacks come to a school, they don't get to play right away, and they decide to transfer. What happened to the days of letting things shake out? Guys like Shane Matthews or guys like Kerwin Bell, those guys came from deep in the depth chart, stayed around, and things worked out their way. I mean, who's to say Trevor Lawrence doesn't go in and get hurt in game number one of him being the starter, and now all of a sudden, you'd had your job back and a chance to solidify that going forward. So I understand this idea that things need to be, the instant gratification that the younger kids have now, but it's a little frustrating. And for me, a rule that the coaches pushed so hard on that we thought was finally going to do something to benefit the student athlete now is going to be manipulated in a way. I think that's going to cause some, like you said, unintended consequences, and ultimately it's going to have to be reevaluated to keep these things from happening in the middle of the season. This is incredibly distracting for teams that are going through it. We saw Jonathan Nance at Arkansas make a similar announcement. So,
a couple guys at Auburn.
How do they handle this? Are these guys excommunicated from the organization, the team? They got to finish up school there. Do you not let them come around your team because of the distraction? There's just a lot of dynamics that I think are going to have to be worked through.
Dabo Swinney offered a chance for Kelly Bryant to stay with the team and said he wouldn't play. He turned it down. Mm-hmm. You might say it's a business decision in one sense. I hate to use that term. I'm always accused of being too old school. You're more hardcore in this than I am, and I totally get it. I'm kind of caught in between. I think the players should get a chance to go play where they want to play.
Sure.
But by the same token, there has to be some regulation. This is not quite right.
There's a time when that should be done. Let's evaluate when the season's over. Let's make a decision at that point in time rather than making a judgment.
If coaches will be honest, though. That's the thing, if they'll be honest. Not all of them are going to do that. Some of them are going to say, I promise
try to lead you along.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, it's something that needs looking at. So.
It's ironic, too, that we spent so much time talking about Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, and yet Clemson this is something happening at Clemson.
As someone said today, maybe that's the reason. Clemson knows they have to have Trevor Lawrence to beat Alabama.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah. This is big time stuff. Interesting scenario there, and we saw interesting consequence last week of Kentucky Wildcats showing up big. Now all of a sudden they're players, and you can't take them lightly anymore.
Now all of a sudden the loss that Florida suffered to them a couple weeks ago doesn't look quite as bad, right? And this is a team I think you and I have talked about a lot, buddy, that I've been high on because of what Coach Stoops has done in accumulating talent across the board. They have depth of talent at every position. They've created competition there. It's brought the whole evolution of the talent up another level too. And I turned on the Mississippi State tape. Now this is going to get us into talking a little Mississippi State Florida too. But I turned the Mississippi State tape on, and Kentucky's defensive line dominated them up front. We're talking about Josh Allen off the edges. They couldn't block him. Penetration up the middle. Multiple false start penalties by that offensive line. And this was a veteran group that returned for them. We felt like that this was going to be a huge challenge on the offensive line, but they're not playing very well. Credit to Kentucky because they did the same thing to Florida, right? They made Florida look like they were the less talented teams on the line of scrimmage. But Mark Stoops is owed a lot of congratulations. I know it's only early in the season right now. Their Vegas win total, buddy, you remember it was 5.5 that they said Kentucky would win. They've already got 4. We're not even done with the month of September yet.
It's a good story. LSU is a good story. We'll see how far that story goes.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mississippi State. They got a couple of first-round draft courses in that defensive line. Kentucky had no problem with them. The question is, how will Florida's offensive line handle those guys?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest telling question in who wins this football game is Florida able to. I don't think they can block them. So I think what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quickly. Bubble screens, tunnel screens. Having some moving the quarterback around a little bit. Jeffrey Simmons, as you know, is a guy that demands double teams up front. And what that does, it frees up guys like Montez Sweat on the outside with one-on-one, opportunities to rush the quarterback from the edge. So it's going to be a challenge. Florida's going to have to find a way to chip him on the outside. But again, it's about mixing up what you're doing and not letting those guys get into third and long situations where they really are sitting ducks in the pocket.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk about picking football games. Florida's a 7.5-point underdog in that game. There's some people who think it's absolutely heresy if you pick against the team you played for.
Yeah.
And last time I looked, your check was not being signed by the University of Florida. Yeah. It's being signed by ESPN, and your job as an analyst there. And it's tough sometimes for people to make that transition. One of the real mature aspects of a broadcaster, as you know, and I compliment you, is the ability to look beyond that and have the loyalty to that person watching there as opposed to having to your alma mater. It's tough for you.
Well, let's be honest. It's uncomfortable for me. I am a huge Gator fan. As you know, I grew up in Gainesville. I've gone to all the games since I was a little kid. I've spent a lot of time and blood, sweat, and tears on the football field as a player. And now, I continue to support the team. I go over to practice whenever I get an opportunity. I go to the former player events that mix with the guys now. I want to be a part of the regrowth, but at the same time, as you mentioned, I have a job. I get paid by ESPN to have an unbiased opinion. And I really believe that while Florida's making strides right now, they're not a great football team. And so if I do anything other than mention that and say those things, then I'm not being true to what I'm getting paid for. And I think the thing that is frustrating to me is that a lot of Gator fans want me to be positive. They say I'm being negative. I'm not being negative. I'm being realistic. I think if Coach Mullen, I'm not afraid for him to hear my evaluations or anybody else because I think they would agree with what I'm saying is the truth. I'm not saying anything demeaning or demoralizing to anybody, but I'm being true with what my evaluation, what my eyes are showing me. And so it means a lot to me that you defended me, your son defended me as well.
He's right here. I'm asking him to come over. And this guy got all fired up. So had your back there, Brenden did.
Good man,
I told Chris, and this is an odd way to do this, but I told Chris, I said, A, I don't appreciate anyone taking on anybody for unjust reasons, and we see enough of that online these days. And B, Chris Dorian was kind of like one of my football player heroes because I was playing high school football when we were a Gator.
That means a lot.
So I looked up to tall white guy, catch the ball anybody, and so I thought maybe if he could walk on and be as successful he was, I did too. So there was a twofold there. So I agree wholeheartedly of what's going on. It's part of why we started the show and what we do. Not that we're orange and blue enthusiasts, but we're also realists as anybody else can say. But there's no reason to call people names and to get after each other and threaten each other and do all this ridiculousness because
Dorian got back in her face. That was the
next post. He had the greatest post. That was very eloquent and nice. He went after it, and then and it was all done. But it's not just Chris; it's everybody, and it's a lot of these guys, former players and athletes, and recruits, by the way, that go through this process. And these are young men trying to figure it out. Look, if you all had Facebook in your face when you were 18 years old and doing all this stuff, it wouldn't be as easy as it is. They're up against a lot.
And I will say this: one of the hardest challenges for me, guys, is getting in this realm of having to make picks and give analysis, and then a world where we're supposed to increase our social media footprint. I get tagged in different things. I hear about what people are saying, and unfortunately, I'm sensitive to that stuff, and I wish I wasn't, and maybe I'll learn to be better at that. But at the end of the day, I think it's the vocal minority that are the people that are a little maybe irrational. And
well, I would say the trolls are about 10% of the actual fan base, you know, or maybe even less.
Yeah.
What I thought what you did was refreshing. You weren't a jerk about it. You were just logical. Yeah. And I think a lot of people agreed with you, and I think that's the difference.
You're not a Gator. You're not a Gator.
No, if I'm not a Gator, I don't know who's a Gator.
Yeah. All right. So having said that, it's time to make a pick. You going to make it now? Or can you do it?
I can't make the pick yet, but I'm welcome. I'm happy to get back on with you. I mean, it's hard for me to think that Florida can go in being a team that's still needing to mature, that's still needing to find leadership, can go in there and face. This is the Super Bowl for Mississippi State, right? They've been pointing to this game since Dan Mullen left there. And how ironic is it? Florida doesn't play Mississippi State ever, but the year that Dan Mullen leaves, they play them, and they play them in Starkville, Mississippi. I mean, I think the atmosphere is going to be unbelievable.
I don't think that's ever happened to a coach. We were talking about that today with Max Howell down in Tupelo, ESPN Mississippi. Mm-hmm. He says he doesn't remember it ever happening. He said he thinks it's the biggest game in the history of Mississippi State.
I think it is too.
There you go.
I think it is too. And you know, we saw. I thought the game last week in Lexington was the biggest game in the history in my history for Kentucky football. They took advantage of it. I'm sure Mississippi State's going to be ready for this.
Kentucky, where you made your name, buddy. Dorian got a touchdown.
I think I've actually won them over a little bit now because I talked well about them on an SEC Now. It just happened to be when Kentucky's basketball team was playing in the Bahamas and the lights in the arena went out. So they came to us in the studio, and I unloaded every bit of Kentucky football knowledge that I had. I picked them to win 8 games, and all of a sudden I got a few more fans in Lexington.
How about that? Chris Doring, a Kentucky Wildcat fan, and they love him in Lexington all of a sudden. They don't love you. Doring got a touchdown. Okay, we'll just wait for your pick on
I'll make sure. I'm going to text you so you know. Because I heard so many people tell me, like, they mentioned to us that, I saw him say that he was picking the Vols on TV. Well, that never occurred. So, I'm going to make sure that you and I talk and that you know who I'm going with. And if I pick against Florida, I'm going to own it. But I'm not going to own it, picking Florida to lose against Tennessee. That was not me.
We'll wait for it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, buddy. That's it from the Ocala Quarterback Club. All right, glad we got that on. And thanks to Chad Ritch, who last night shot that. We're going to stay on a little extra longer with you tonight for those folks who are still with us tonight. Thank you for your loyal following and finding us all the way over here. We promise not to do that again. We got a few settings off today, but we'll get back to it. Yeah, for sure. Brenden talking about this Q the crazy guy trying to break the door down. We were sitting in the Elks Club there, and we're shooting this, and the door is locked, and there was a meeting in the adjacent room. Some guy came to the door and thought we should get up in the middle of our broadcast and come over and open the door for him, and began shaking this thing crazy. Like, they heard that rattle noise. So, some people, I'm telling you, amazing. So, all right, so I'll leave it up to you. If you want to, still got the predictions to go from last night. If you want to hear those, let me know. We'll fire those up and put them on. Matthew says, wondering what that noise was, and that's what it was. Some guy at the door thought we should. Yeah, Lynn says a plastic cowbell. Actually, it was one of those doors you push open, with the handle, and making all that racket. So that guy was not nice. Thanks for the comment on the interview. I like Doring. Getting back to the person who said they thought Doring is really becoming a top. I think it was Henry. Yeah. Chris is one of the better analysts on TV. I like Chris because he's really worked hard. I said to him, we have discussions all the time about his TV career, and I'm interested in that kind of stuff. And I said, Chris, one thing about you is you're still learning, and I like that you keep on growing. And it, just like he was a walk-on. I said, you learned Spurrier's routes eventually, and look what you did. You're learning how to do this on TV, and he studies. And he's dedicated to it. He's passionate. He watches a ton of film. He knows the game. I don't think it was on this video. No, it wasn't. But his comments, I thought, were some of the most spot-on comments I've heard all year. Just honest analysis, saying that he watched the film on the receivers of Florida, and there were too many go routes. Now, we know there's some receivers, and Len, you would know this too, so like Tony. And actually, he's not going to be polished as a blocker or a route runner, so he probably gets a lot of go routes. But Chris pointed out that because you run a go route, which is a straight line, then the defensive backs can get their shoulder underneath you and kind of take away the back shoulder fade and what have you, and a lot of things. But if you run the post and the slant and some of the other routes that as Chris says, you got to you put your foot in the ground, stick your foot in the ground, and cut. Then it takes away the advantage that the defensive backs have on you, and some of these receivers haven't learned that yet. A couple are, and a couple are developing. And one of the things that Chris said, and I've said this several times, I think it's a very valid point. When you talk about the quarterbacks, you look at Felipe Franks, you say, look, the guy can't get rid of the ball. Well, as Chris pointed out, and he's not necessarily a huge fan of Franks, although he thinks he's playing well, you look at him back there going like this, trying to get to some kind of progression. He can't check it down to 3 or 4 receivers. But if he tries to shake it off and there's only one guy, nobody open, what do? You gotta wait for a guy to clear, or you don't want to throw the ball in the crowd, etc. So that's part of it. And we think Billy Gonzalez will fix that. We think Billy Gonzalez is one of the best receiver coaches in the country. Even Steve Spurrier made a comment about some route combinations he liked that he saw. And ultimately, if these receivers get better, and they will, they got some talent at the wide receiver position. I mean, they do. I know there's some deficiencies. I still like the way this team's playing. I wouldn't give up on Saturday night. I just wouldn't give up on Saturday night. I'm telling you, this team its best football is ahead of them. So that's the deal. So all right, let's do this. Let's go ahead and play our you guys can talk among yourselves. Seems like you got a conversation going there, talking about some things. And let's get Lynn's comment up there about Tony earning the trust of Dan Mullen. I agree with you. Lynn has some very good football knowledge, by the way, and thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and drop this little thing on you here about the picks, and our extended version of the Buddy Martin Show. A little late getting started there, but here's what we said last night in our picks. We're back at the Ocala Elks Lodge here for our pick-a-thon. It's a Wednesday night, the Ocala Quarterback Club. The 3 of us sit here and do this every Wednesday night. Some of us do it better than others. No names mentioned here. I'm Buddy Martin, along with the scorekeeper, Fred Lamp, to my right, and to my left, he's back. He's been in Las Vegas. His pockets are full of money. Danny Williams. So let's get right to it, and tell us how great we did last week, Fred.
Well, Buddy, actually last week you went 4-1. But because of your diminished bankroll from your lock of the year bet the week before,
you're going to keep rubbing
you
me.
only won. Of course I am.
Well, I won. Give me a little victory here.
Well, you did. You won $150.
Thank you. I'll take it.
And that puts you at $1,200 in your bankroll that started at $5,000.
Started at $5,000.
The mythical bankroll.
It's a little sarcasm in that, but go ahead.
Now, Danny went 2-3. But unfortunately, bet $500 on his lock so far this year, and that knocked him down to $4,400 in his mythical bankroll. And I went 4-1, had bet $150 per game, so I was plus $450 and have $4,950 in my mythical bankroll.
Congratulations.
All of us are below where we started, but I am in first place at this point. For this week, you have said you want me to go first with all my picks.
Read the games off first, and then after you read them off, then you can go with your picks, right?
For this week, the games are Nevada plus 6.5 at Fresno State.
Do we have to have that game? I just assume not.
Absolutely. That's why we have it, because you wouldn't like it. Then we have Florida plus 7.5 at Mississippi State. USC at Arizona with 3.5. Arizona with 3.5. Stanford plus 5.5 at Notre Dame, and Ohio State at Penn State, who get 3.5.
All right. Who you like?
So, in the first game, Nevada plus 6.5 at Fresno State. I'm going with Fresno State. Florida with 7.5 at Mississippi State.
Yep.
I'm going to go with Florida.
Going with Florida.
I'm sorry. I'm going with Mississippi State.
Oh, Mississippi State. Talked him out of it.
Excuse me.
He didn't really
USC at Arizona with 3.5. I'm going with USC.
USC.
Stanford plus 5.5 at Notre Dame. I'm going with Stanford. Ohio State at Penn State with 3.5. I'm going with Ohio State.
You failed to say how much you're betting on this game.
$150 a game.
That's it?
Yeah.
You don't have a lock of the week?
No.
Okay, so let me go then. All right, first of all, I'd like to knock...
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry, we're into the fourth week. I'm going to go 200 per game. It's 200 a game.
Is there anything else you want to change before we start?
$200 a game.
Okay, $200 a game. And by the way, if I could bet zero on this first game, I would, but I have to bet how much?
50.
Yeah, I love this game. You have a thing about Fresno State. Okay, Nevada, Fresno State. I'm going to take Fresno to cover the 6.5. I'll take $50 is all I want to spend. Can I spend 25? No, I can't. Okay, I'm going to say about Florida to the last. I'm going the other way. I'm taking Arizona at home plus 3.5 versus USC.
For how much?
$50. Don't love it. I've got Ohio State. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. They'll cover the 3.5 at Penn State in the whiteout. And by the way, the Stanford game.
Wait a minute. How much you betting on Ohio State?
$50. And I'll give you my lock of the week.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm taking Stanford.
That's
right.
who I took.
What?
That's who I took.
5.5 points, right?
Yeah.
They get 5.5.
Right.
I'm taking them against Notre Dame. And finally, the Gators.
How much you going to bet on that?
I'm going to bet $500 on that game.
Okay.
Stanford?
Yes, I am. Hey, who won last week?
I know. Learn how to kneel. Okay. Learn how to kneel down and win the
last
game.
week. All right. Who was 4-1?
Your fifth pick, bud.
Yes, my pick's Jack. Kicked it back to Vegas. Okay, and finally, Florida. Because you went Mississippi State, I'm going to go the other way. I'm taking Florida in the 7.5 points for $100.
I'm going to take yours.
All right. Now the big guy just got back from Vegas. How'd you do, by the way?
I won a few real dollars. Not a lot, but enough to get me back home.
And you laughed at me for winning. How much did I win last week? You laughed at me. I'll take $150. Go.
I texted you. First game, I guess I'm going to take the home team, Fresno State. Not sure why. I don't know. $100 for each game. That's my limit this week, so I get caught up again. Florida, Mississippi State. I was one of those guys that thought Mississippi State was really good. I still think they are. I'm going to stay with them for one more week. I'm going to take Mississippi State over Florida.
Okay.
Southern Cal and Arizona. Arizona, I don't think is a very good team. USC's average at best. I'm going to take USC. Stanford, Notre Dame. Stanford got lucky winning that game last week. You got to kneel down, Coach. I'm taking Notre Dame for $100, and then Ohio State and Penn State.
Yeah.
Urban Meyer's 14-2 as a travel underdog or a travel favorite. 14-2. So I'm taking Ohio State to make it 15-2. Ohio State.
All right. Well, that's it. I hear the noise outside right now.
So there's no disputes.
Yeah.
I've got Danny $100 a game.
Yeah.
You've got Fresno, Mississippi State, USC, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. Buddy, you have for $50 a game Fresno, Arizona, and Ohio State. For $100 Florida, and for $500 Stanford.
Correct.
And I am $200 across the board. Fresno, USC, Ohio State, Stanford, and Mississippi State.
And there you have it, Fred Lant, Danny Williams. The noise outside is the rain. It's also those people leaving on a plane to Vegas with these picks. We'll be back next week for more picks right here at the Ocala Quarterback Club. All right, so you got it all right there. All that good stuff, yeah. I'm glad I'm not doing this for a living. That's all I got to say. It's hard. Well, going to be fun. Don't forget, mark this down. Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, it's Football Friday. I'm going to try to get that in during the day. I'll try to get on the right channel this time. It'll be sitting there all day for you folks who can't watch it. You can watch it later. We're going to do some more picking with our expert out of Denver, Joe Williams, who's a very good handicapper. In fact, he'll be at the airport on his way to Las Vegas to make a football wagering weekend out of there. These guys that got all this money go to Vegas. Gosh, all these Williams guys, Danny Williams, Joe Williams. And then Paul Feinbaum's my special guest tomorrow. I want to get his perspective and take on. They're going to be SEC team is going to be at in Starkville, and I want to get his take on Mullen. Paul was a Mullen guy a long time before he came to Florida. He liked him. He thought he was a really good coach. So I want to see what he thinks about the assessment, what the assessment is of Mullen and the job he's doing. We all know he's doing well, but keep in mind, I'm going to leave you with this before you go to bed tonight. Okay, think about it. What's your expectations? Don't let them get out of whack. And I say this because it's probably better than a 50% chance that Florida won't win the game Saturday night. And don't come in here on Sunday saying it's all over. Recruiting is ruined. Florida's a 6-win team. Mullen hadn't got him coached up. Franks is a terrible quarterback. Let's not overreact to every game, okay? We should have learned our lesson a little bit after what we saw the Kentucky game and now what we saw this past weekend at Tennessee. So just let's do this. Let's try our best to enjoy the football season, watch the games, and if you want to watch the SEC games, fine. I'm going to be interested in Kentucky, South Carolina, matter of fact. And see how it comes out. It's going to be a fun night at Starkville, one way or the other. And I think Max had a great comment, and I'll leave you with that. He says, either way, Dan Mullen is going to be winning because he built the team he's playing against, and he's bringing a team in there he's trying to rebuild. So that's a good way of looking at it. Final thought, a little optimism from Sodi there about what he thinks Florida gets out alive based on the knowledge Dan Mullen has on Fitzgerald. Okay, well, there you go. Tomorrow morning you can make your picks if you like, and we won't give you anything. One day we'll maybe develop a picks contest if you like it, see what we can do for it. So with that, I want to thank my guest tonight, Zach Abelverdi. Brendan Martin checking in and talk about the Tim Tebow promise. Boy, 10 years, can't believe it. Good to hear from Max Howell always. And of course, our tape segments with Chris Doring and Fred Lant and Danny Williams and the team. Appreciate that very much. Appreciate everything you did tonight, folks. Hope you enjoyed the show. I enjoyed bringing it to you. We'll say good night from Studio 12. Don't forget, 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, Football Friday.